Welcome to Offshoot, the Fident Capital podcast with host Kevin Choquette. Offshoot is a curiosity-driven conversation that features a wide range of real estate and business professionals. In each episode, we unpack the knowledge, vantage point, and domain expertise of our guests. Then we move beyond the facts and figures and dive into the personal habits and mindset which allow them to be high performers in their respective field. This podcast's objective is simple: supporting entrepreneurs, fostering relationships, and uncovering meaningful conversations that positively impact business.
Welcome, everyone, to part 2 of my conversation with Jason Luker from Cardinal Group. If you haven't already heard part 1, please go back and give it a listen. We go deep on all manner of institutional capital markets, as well as how his tenacity, culture, and a sharp executive team took Cardinal Group from 0 to $2 billion of assets under management with 2,000 employees. Look, you've shared a ton on the business. It's awesome. Thank you. Personal side, let's switch over a little bit. This is like very broad-reaching question, but there are a lot of things I suspect you could have done with your life. And you did explain, I asked my dad, like, hey, what do all your rich friends do? And it was either insurance or real estate. But even so, now you're 15 years into it. I think you probably could have decided you didn't like it, or maybe gone and done something else. So like on a personal level, why do you continue to trade commercial real estate? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this adventure? And, what is there some part of it that feeds you outside of like the monetary part?
Yeah, definitely. I like quickly fell in love with real estate because I'd always had like a very commercial mindset and always been an entrepreneur and started, a dozen businesses from the time I was 10 years old or so. Real estate to me just had that perfect kind of mix of analytical and tactile. And I would say housing in particular, like you couldn't pay me to buy industrial real estate. I just have zero interest in that. But I've always been, I've been like obsessed with this old house since I was little, and just the way people live and the environments they live and how they choose to live and where they choose to live, all of the, dynamics behind, housing in general has been fascinating to me. Like, absolutely love that we get to provide housing for people, and, they're living out their lives and all the daily dramas in an asset that we manage is actually like fascinating. And then I'd say on the kind of technical side, real estate finance is amazing. Like everyone dresses it up in fancy language in terms of art, but like it's 8th grade algebra at most, yeah. Right? So you don't have to be that. You don't have to be that smart, but it's really still interesting to do. And there's just endless ways to put deals together. I mean, this is something you excel at. It's like there's nothing more interesting than just taking this huge knotted up deal with all of these weird, contingencies and hairballs associated with it and figuring out like an elegant path to getting it done. Like that's just deeply satisfying to do. That never gets old. And then, as the business has grown, you add on the people side of it that becomes like really, a lot of my relationships and social network is now like tied up with the business. And like, so I love the fact that I have an excuse. I mean, I'm, a middle-aged dude who gets to talk to his 2 best friends for like an hour or 2 every day. Like that's a pretty unusual situation for most men my age. Yeah. So like to have that built-in excuse to, call Eric and Alex and shoot the shit. And, we'll talk deals and the business and personal. And like, that's a pretty remarkable thing that I don't take for granted. So it's hard to step away from something like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just a comment on the 8th grade algebra, sort of aspect of real estate finance. I agree with you. And I think a lot of it in terms of the lingo is kind of, career management, like very,
Yeah, this
very
ain't physics,
centric.
man.
Right. But this is complicated and you don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to keep
Exactly.
using this. I mean, every industry has its lingo, and until you get through the lingo, you actually don't really know what people are talking about. But the part that I also, like you've said it in that you can kind of go, okay, this is a hairy deal and how am I going to navigate it? What's also amazing is that there's no real regulatory guidelines onto what's allowed.
Totally.
If somebody can say, hey, you put up all the money, I'll take 20% on the return of capital and the profits, and somebody wants to sign up for that, they can do it. If somebody's, literally anything that you can articulate, if you can find a buyer on the other side, it's game on. And that part's really fun. It's just, there's not a lot of spaces where you can be that like unfettered by the construct.
Yeah, it's, whenever I'm in a negotiation and people say, well, that's market or this isn't market, my reaction is always exactly that. As market is whatever two willing people will do. So
that's exactly right.
I don't really care what you think the market is. How
That's
bad
right.
do you want this deal?
That's
or how
right.
bad do I need it?
Yeah. Here's my ask. Do you want to make a bid?
Exactly.
Yeah. So look, honestly, the way you talk about the company, it seems you're being very conscientious about how you relate to the employees and the culture. And in a lot of ways, that actually sounds like a give back. But I wonder if there's anything that Cardinal does or that you do on the personal side just to give back to the community or how that might show up in your life.
Yeah, most of that stuff does run through the business too.
Yeah.
And like that's been certainly a big push for us. So we have Cardinal Cares, which is our kind of charitable giving arm within the organization. And we certainly do a lot around Colorado, and the three of us do personally. I generally don't talk about that kind of stuff. I'm kind of prefer to be in the background with it, but it's certainly been an important thing. I think, we, on the personal side, being mentors in the business has been probably the most satisfying thing I've done. Giving away money's fine, but like actually mentoring is, because I had some awesome mentors that were immensely helpful to me. And this business is a mentoring business. You have to just kind of learn it at the seat of the people who've done it before and learn all the terms of art. And so I think that side of the business has been probably the most satisfying piece.
Well, that's a good segue. So mentors for you, like who do you point to that's kind of helped you along the way, whether they're mentors or just role models and people that you kind of looked up to? I just wonder what key relationships might have set you on this trajectory or given you the perspective to understand, while what you're talking about isn't rocket science, the symphony that you've been playing for 15 years and all of the different instruments and the way you guys are doing this, honestly, is like, you've got a really good grasp. I mean, you guys are the 1% of the 1%. So somebody's, I'm suspecting, kind of helped you out along the way.
Yeah, I've been very lucky for sure. My first mentor in the business was actually Peter Hall, who was my first boss, and he was the head of Center City Development Corporation for a long time. And he was just an old school real estate exec, and just kind of an old school business guy. And so that was really fun. That was like my first like real professional experience of like learning from someone who was like at the top of the game. And just seeing how he carried himself, how he made decisions, how he thought through those things. And he was very generous with me with his time. Brought me into meetings I had no business being in. Let me sit in on phone calls, let me do things for him that would have been, that were just totally outside of my scope, that were just like so instructive and made me feel like I was in the mix, like I was actually like learning and getting exposure to things. He was huge. Nate Mader, our mutual friend at London Group, was awesome. And he taught me so much about how to look at real estate. He taught me, it was kind of sort of like how to analyze real estate generally, like certainly a lot of specific tactics, but I think Nate is one of the smartest guys I've ever worked with. And he was a ton of fun. I used to, make fun of him because he was like, about my age or so when I worked for him.
Totally.
I used to make fun of him because he would go home at 5:30 every day. I was like, dude, don't you want to put in 100-hour weeks and like push this? And like, but he was looking at sustainability across his entire career, which I've adopted since then. I'm like, yeah, maybe this guy's on to something. It's like, if you want to keep doing this for a long time, like 100-hour weeks are not the ticket to longevity. That's for sure. But
Yeah.
he was amazingly helpful. And then I've more recently in the last like 10 years or so, Mike Karp and Stu Schiff up here who are at DivCore have been like really, really instrumental in how we think about kind of platform. Because they built an amazing Divco West and DivCore have built like an unbelievable, debt office platform. And they invested with us a little bit in their GP, and they were really helpful in raising our first fund. And they kind of gave me, I think, a lot more insight into how the game is played at that level. I was, I think, stuck thinking a little bit small ball for a while when
On the deal by deal basis, get the promote, do the next deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they kind of, I think, opened my eyes a little bit. It's like, hey, the scale is what matters, and here's how it's done. Here's how you approach this. And they really also taught me how to I think they taught me about kind of institutional capital markets. Like I had a much more of a chauffeur's theoretical understanding of it, and they were incredibly successful raising money. I think they've got 20 some billion under management right now. So it was definitely an education. They were super helpful, and they're also like old school New York real estate dudes who are just tough as nails. And I just like that. Like it was just fun being around them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What about the personal side? Any challenges you've had to come through just to get here? And I'm thinking of things like, I'm gonna just make them up just to get you in the where my head's at, like any physical handicap or mental challenges or health scares or relationship things, anything that has been a significant impediment outside of the professional challenges that you've been articulating.
Yeah, I have had that in spades for sure. I worked myself to death in my 20s and 30s and suffered a lot for that. We had this kind of saying. So I played baseball in college, and there was this idea that you had a social life, you had academic success, and you had athletic success, and you got to pick two of those. And that actually translated when I started the business as well. And social life, you can have business success or you can be healthy. And I let the health side slip, which was unusual for me because I've always been very active. But I let it slip for sure. I mean, I even stopped surfing, which was, been an obsession for my life. I stopped for 5 years, which was crazy. But, I felt like I needed to give absolutely everything to this business. I've got a whole lot, and that cost me a lot. And then, socially, and I did not have a normal 20s. I didn't have that experience. So certainly that, but in the grand scheme of things, man, I was born on third base. I've got no illusions about that. My parents aren't wealthy, but they made enough money to send me to private schools that were really well attended. I've been schooled in the best institutions. I've always lived in a safe place. When I started the business, if it fell, my parents were going to bail me out, but I could sleep at their house. There was no failure would have been embarrassing. It wouldn't have been devastating. So that gave me a tremendous amount of freedom to take risks. So I certainly sacrificed a lot, but I think I got off pretty easy where we are compared to most people that have to sacrifice that. And I'd certainly have rather done it for myself than working at Blackstone for 10 years,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You just mentioned the idea of failing. Have you had any, I realize this is like a contradictory term, but any favorite failures, any particular zingers that taught you something that you needed to learn? I mean, this notion of experience is what you get when you didn't get what you expected.
Oh man. Yeah. Where do I even start on that?
Right.
I can't even begin to explain the amount of stuff I fucked up over the years. The problem with me is I'm not smart enough to not do it again. You know what I mean? So
Right. Damn it. I already did this once too.
Yeah, I keep unfortunately learning the same lesson twice, which is not super helpful. We've actually been fortunate, and I credit this to just where the markets are, but we've never lost money on a deal. I think
Wow, that's fantastic.
our lowest returning deal was like an 8 IRR over 4 years or something like that. And most of our failures, frankly, have just been in building the business, hiring the wrong people, putting the people who weren't ready for roles over important parts of the business. Like most of our failures have been sort of around the choppiness of startup organization and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where we lost some like key clients early on because we screwed up something or other that was totally predictable that we should have known. None of it turned out to be fatal, certainly, but man, we've made a lot of mistakes along the way. But like, I don't know, I've always had the sort of mindset that's like, well, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to curl up in a ball and die, or like go fix it? Like almost anything can be unwound, if you're willing to work hard enough.
Well, there's another part. If you go back to the comment about, the 15 duplexes, and I know I'm taking some editorial liberty there and talking to the guy about the $30 million acquisition, that entire idea of like fake until you make it. It's not the faking it of like your own commitment and tenacity, but it's the faking it of like trusting that your credentials are secondary to who you are. And same thing here, right? Like you make a mistake, you dust yourself off, you just keep going. You're like, okay, let's hopefully I don't have to do it again.
Totally. Yeah. My partners and I have always kind of had the mindset that we'll sort of figure it out,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
there's a certain arrogance involved in that, certainly. But like, I don't know. I feel like we'll figure it out. I certainly don't know everything, but I know people who do know everything. I could probably get the answer for you,
Yeah. And that arrogance is really just healthy confidence. It's not, I don't think you're saying like, I know everything. I think you're
God,
just
no.
saying, I trust that I can work through the process and get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about just success, right? Like you go back, I love this like 2002 Toyota pickup idea, to where you guys are now. And early, you're just really hoping that, you're the visual as you're on the desert island, you're putting little messages in the glass bottle, you're sending them out, a bunch of them every day, and you're just waiting for somebody to send a message back. And eventually you get a message back. You're like, whoa, these guys actually want to do something. And at this point, I have to imagine like the shore is just littered with bottles of messages that are people trying to get through to do whatever they want your time to be consumed with. And that's kind of one aspect of being successful is our time gets crowded and there's a lot of things competing for our attention. It goes back to this discussion of like working in the business versus on the business and all of that. I just wonder how you manage that challenge and the change from the early days to now.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's very difficult. Like as the business grows and it becomes more successful, the phone starts to ring for a lot of opportunities that are tangential to your core business.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to have the discipline to exploit your market advantages and your kind of structural advantages that you have, and keep your focus there and not get distracted, while at the same time, which sounds contradictory, being sort of, open enough to understand that you do need to grow and change in order to like maintain those market advantages. And a lot of that growth and change can entail doing things you might not be totally suited to do. So I think we have a very good sense of what our circle of competency is, like, and understand how to sort of stay in our lane. While like early on we were very entrepreneurial and would do almost anything that sounded interesting. And now I think we're a lot more protective of our time and our treasure to say, like, if we're going to go into X, Y, or Z, like it's got to be like, I have to have a clear path we always ask that question, like, what needs to happen for this to be successful? And like, give me some probabilistic thinking on these outcomes here. Say like, if this bank shot needs to hit off the garage and then off the hood of the car and then the top of the backboard and then go in, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I want free throws. I want straight up free throws.
Backboard, just right off the backboard.
So like that is actually very difficult. I've seen this a lot with friends as well as one guy in particular I know who's been like amazingly successful, but the phone just rings and then you look up 3 years later and you're like, how did I get into all these weird businesses and lines and stuff? And it's like, well, it all just sounded interesting at the time, but keeping your eye on your core business, like LeBron always says, it's like first things first. Like, people hire me to sell their products because I'm good at basketball. If I'm no longer good at basketball, I don't get any of this other shit. So like, I need to be good at basketball first and foremost,
And it's a paradox, right? I don't even think it's contradictory. It's the one thing of like, hey, this is where my core competence is. I'm going to stay here. And at the same time, you just brought something up that seems kind of crazy, but it actually caught my attention. And I don't want to be so myopic that I don't even entertain the fact that that could be a multiplier for my business.
Totally.
Yeah. Routines, like daily routines, right? I don't know how you shape up on all of this. You mentioned surf, and it sounds like you maybe picked up the fitness thing after giving it a rest for a bit. But what might you do on the regular to try to get your head right before you step on the court of your business?
Yeah, that's funny. I exercise every single day now.
Nice.
I'm back, but I'm like, that's like classic middle-aged dude who wants to live forever type anxiety.
Right.
So like, I stay active. So I got back in the water probably 7 or 8 years ago, which has been nice. I live up here in the Bay Area, so it's kind of a year-round outdoor paradise. But I definitely stay fit a lot. But I've got 2 young kids at home right now, and so my perspective has changed a lot, and the balance of my day is a lot different. So I can't burn it down at work like I used to. One, just the raw hours away. That's like an unacceptable trade-off for me. And then 2, the like, I don't want to come home drained either.
Yep.
Like, that's not acceptable to me either. So I live a lot more balanced life. Like, early on, like, cost me a lot relationship wise, the way I approach work. And I've got a whole lot more balance in my life. I'm still not cool, and I'm certainly not laid back, but I'm better than I used to be. That's for sure.
What about the end of the day? You got anything that gives you relief? Where do you kick up your feet and just kind of go, all right, that was a good day?
Honestly, I do absolutely. Like, I don't drink, I don't smoke. I read books. That's functionally what I do to like relax. And I watch I watch a lot of like engineering on like YouTube, like complex engineering projects. Yeah, they're fascinating to me. Like, building some enormous bridge in Japan or something like that is like endlessly fascinating, all the technical details. So yeah, I waste a lot of time doing that at night after the kids are asleep.
That sounds nice, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I got 2 more for you, but you've kind of, I'm guessing by the magnitude of the venture that you've created, that this question, I hope, has like some resonance, and it's around like the utility of money. If you kind of go Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's food, and then it's shelter, and then I think at the top we've got self-actualization. But money plays a part in that somehow, and at some point, you might get to a point where the money doesn't have this same preciousness that it did when you start the journey, because there might be a little bit of extra. I just wonder how you think about the utility of money. Like, what is it once you've got enough? Like, I know that's kind of a super esoteric question, and you could feel free to punt on it, but if you've got thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
No, I certainly do. I mean, when my first job, I think I made like $32,000.
Yep.
Which this was not 1970 either. Like that wasn't shit back when I was had that job too. It's like it was like sharing a bedroom with friends, and so like there was certainly a long period there where like I was certainly motivated by that. Um, and then you have the first couple waves of success, and like it feels amazing for like 6 weeks, and then you go back to just being you.
Uh-huh.
And so like if that happens enough that you're sort of like, okay, I've sort of reached the end of like I'm not like from a consumption standpoint, like look, I understand in the grander scheme of things, like I live a ridiculous lifestyle, but it's actually a pretty like we don't consume a whole lot. Like that's not really my thing. Um But I will say, the difference between, 50 and $150,000 a year is life changing.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between 150 and 1.5 is really not anything,
Mm-hmm.
And so like, and then certainly 1.5 to 15 is like, who cares at that
Mm-hmm.
point? So like, I dipped my toe in all that stuff early on when we first started having success, and it was a ton of fun. And I was just kind of like, tried it, not interested, and go back to my normal life. Like, if I didn't have to do anything all day, I would probably look at real estate deals and, surf a few times a week and hang out with my family. So like, I'm kind of doing what I would do if I won the lottery anyway. So why would
Yeah.
I, stop it? So, but yeah, especially early on when you're starting out in your career, like that drive to make enough and secure resources to be able to support yourself first and then hopefully other people is like pretty hard. But like I don't know, my wife's a do-gooder and we're gonna die with zero. So
Nice.
we're gonna that money is just gone. That's gone when I'm gone.
I like it. But there's another thing you're saying, which is your work has become an expression of self. And it sounds, anyway, again, I don't want to be putting words into your mouth. It sounds like it is intrinsically rewarding. You enjoy manifesting and creating with your friends, and like having executed strategies and built something that has some real gravity to it.
Totally. It's very satisfying. It is very satisfying. Yeah, the work is really fun and the people are really fun. And like, yeah, it's very satisfying to build something kind of big and long term like this.
So think of your $32,000 a year self, or think of yourself, I don't know, say 7 years ago, or think of yourself 3 years ago. I know you understand full and well that the entrepreneur's ride is days of glory and then just days of hell and everything in between. And, you just kind of go like, okay, this is a shit day. I'm not going to make any decisions that are important today. And then this is an amazing day. I'm similarly not going to make any really important decisions today. But ideas you might want to share to any of the entrepreneurs anywhere in their life cycle in terms of, maybe things you wish you could have learned earlier, or words of encouragement, like anything that comes up for you in terms of helping guys and gals on their journey.
Yeah, I'd say, early on, one of my superpowers was that I was sort of unembarrassable, if that's a word. Um, I would try and ask anything. My partner, Eric Frank, is like, he's like that 10X. Like, he just doesn't care. Like, I won't be embarrassed by asking a stupid question or like, trying to get in over my head. And like that kind of talent, because like there's nothing more awkward than being 24 years old and asking people for loads of money to do things. Like that's a very difficult conversation for people to have. Like you're either overly arrogant and they're like, this 24-year-old doesn't know what the hell they're doing, there's no chance I'm giving them money, or you're overly deferential and you lack sort of the confidence to do it. So like being sort of unembarrassable and willing to go for it, I think is probably like you just can't get started without that. And then the lesson that I continue to learn every day is survival is victory. Like just keep going and making the next best decision is it. Like you can't map everything out. Like my 5-year plan from 5 years ago did not have me doing what I'm doing today, like in the business, but we just kept making the next right decision, and like the more you keep the music going, the more inevitable it becomes. So there were so many chances to just bail out early. And I'm really glad we kept it going. And I don't know what it looks like over the next 10, 15, 20 years, but like, who the hell knows? But like the idea that we'll just keep going and keep compounding is probably the secret sauce.
Yeah. Awesome. So the website and everything anybody could ever want to find for you guys is Cardinal Group. Google it. You guys can't miss it. For all the listeners who've come this far, thank you for taking the time. My production guys tell me to remind you to go and put up a review if you enjoyed it. And Jason, thank you very much for sharing your time with me and all the listeners. Any closing is yours. And again, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun, man. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you reached out, and I've really enjoyed our friendship, and it's cool to see it come full circle with this.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I agree. All right. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.